Hi, good afternoon. My name is Andrew Bastian. I'm the owner and chief instructor with Pikes Peak Tactical. I'm also a student with the Sonoran Desert Institute, or SDI, currently participating in FTT 210, customizing woodworking with Professor Davis. Today we're going to be going over how to properly inlet the action, or the percussion lock, as well as the butt plate and toe plate for a Traditions Shenandoah Muzzleloader. Let's get started. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to have to position our lock assembly, our percussion lock right here, inside the wood. Okay. We notice right there, it does hang up, it doesn't seat firmly in there, so we are going to have to remove some material to figure out exactly where it sits. Okay. With that said, we're going to remove this. Now we don't have any inletting black, but what we do have is called Prussian blue, excuse me. To my understanding, it works the same way. This is what was provided by SDI for the completion of this lab. Put it right along the contact edges. Put this off to the side so it won't make a mess. Good. Gently place this in here. Now, because the school didn't supply us with a rawhide mallet, I'm going to use the other mallet they gave us, the other hammer. Gently tap. What that should do, try to make a mess, right? It should transfer all along right here so we can kind of see what material needs to be removed. I'm going to take my scraper chisel. I'm going to begin slowly removing material. Be careful to take mine, not to remove too much. Oh, now you see the percussion lock is inlet. Comes back, the hammer will lock, and perform a full cycle flawlessly. Next up, we're going to be working on preparing some of our brass bits, particularly the butt plate. So because these are cast brass, there's a lot of marks from the mold lines on the inside, or right here on the lines, that are going to be making contact with the wood. So because of that, we want to clean it up and make them as smooth as possible, polish them up a little bit if we can. That way everything fits nice and smoothly. So. There we go. Got all our mold lights cleaned up. It's good. We'll start inletting it. Alright, the next thing we're going to work on is inletting the butt plate. So, right now we know that there's gaps here on both sides. I'll try to get it as centered as we can. See, this is the rough idea of where it's going to be centered. So, Because of that, I'm going to take my pencil, just draw the line to where I roughly think it's centered. That way I can line it up better when it's time to, after we put the inletting solution on it. Okay. Just going to remove this. Get in our Prussian blue again. I'm going to put this on our Q-tip. Just a little bit. A little bit does go a really long way. And we're just going to place it on the contacts portions. Alright, so now this is inlet. We're going to put this back in place in our approximate center.
He's done.
So I'm going to push down. Let's get a solid mark on this side, on the top, and then we're going to push down up here.
W, Z, X, Y.
So
How do you know
right now we can tell there's a pretty big gap in between these, so I got to start carving them. Alright, so our camera died on the last part. We finished getting this mounted and secure. What we did is we took this the toe plate and we filed it down to match the bevel right here. We trimmed back what we could on this portion to get it flat. And I also went ahead and already tapped my pilot holes. So, the pilot holes tapped, I'm going to go ahead and drill them out and secure the toe plate. One sec, baby.
Woo! Let's go now. I can't hear you. Why was it too loud?
Toe plate secure, butt plate secure. We're going to sand down these contours and everything to match in a later module. Tactical. Today we're going to be going over part 2 of our assembly of our Traditions Shenandoah Muzzleloader. Excuse me, I'm going to let you talk. Again, I'm a student of SDI, currently in the customizing woodworking course, going over our muzzleloader lab. So, let's get to it. First, we're going to start off by getting rid of these machine marks and getting rid of the cast lines. We want to make sure that this is going to properly fit the inlet of the stock. It'll have to work. I have to use a slightly oversized countersink since the school does not provide a countersink. So, that is what we're dealing with. So on one note, I need to also notice that as detailed as the video is that the school gives us as a direction, and as detailed, or lack thereof rather, as the workbook is, there is so much lacking as far as the amount of information needed to perform this lab, in my opinion, at the level needed to be competent. I had to look up several other resources that weren't from the school just to have an understanding of what the parts were, because there's no parts list with any of these. So the screws I'm guessing on. Everything I'm guessing on. Because the school didn't think we needed to know what size screws went where. So that part's cool. So yeah. I really like this opportunity to work on this, but doesn't mean a whole lot if it's gonna look like shit afterwards. So going forward, I think the school needs to do a better job of providing a more detailed instruction manual, maybe a parts list or two, considering the schematic that was given to us doesn't tell us anything about the size of these screws, and there's no blown up versions or pictures of them. So super cool, but whatever. Guess we're gonna do it this way. Our thimble is done. Okay, now we're going to mark out where the second thimble is going to go on the front end. So what I'm doing is just marking out here where I'm going to want to drill my hole. Then here on the side, there's an indent on the inside of the barrel channel. This line right here shows where it ends because we don't want to put the hole or any part of the thimble through that. So move it back, drill my hole. Alright, the next one we're going to be working on is our barrel tenons. So, before we can put pins in to hold the barrel in place, these little tenons go in here. They sit this way, perpendicular or parallel to the barrel. So later when we drill a hole through, you can drill a pin and it holds in place. But because these don't fit, we have to go through the process of fitting them. So we've gone ahead and set this up in our sight pusher because it operates off the same principle of a, hard sight system on any other rifle or handgun. With the dovetail cuts, this sight pusher makes it really easy to just turn the wheel after aligning everything, making sure it's straight. Oh, one second. Just like that, we've drifted it into place where we need to. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing to the back side. Next, we're going to be working on drilling our holes in our tenons for our pins. So what we're going to do first, we need to mark exactly on our stock where we're going to have to drill. So, because it's going to have to sit in its inlet, we're not going to be able to see exactly. So what I want to do, try to move it as close to the rear as I can get it, without putting it all the way in the barrel, or without all the way putting it in the barrel channel. I'm going to line it up back here to where it would sit if it was fully seated. Using my pencil, mark just the center. Where that sits. Pencil, I have the center marked. Then I'm going to install the barrel. Percussion lock and make sure that sits right where it needs to sit as well. Okay. Don't do that. So we know that right where these lines end is right where the wood sits. So what we're going to do now is we need to take a measurement and find out exactly where the end of the barrel or the tenon sits in relation to the stock. So I'm going to zero out my caliper. I want it about there in the center. So that measurement here, what I'm going to do on my stock is simple. So first I'm going to loosen the vise. So I haven't changed the measurement on my caliper. Tighten it down. That's going to be my mark for where I drill. So, kind of highlight it just a little bit with this, so I don't lose it. That's something I want to do on the front end. Re-zero it, because I always want to work with an accurate measurement. Okay. On the front end, where my fitness mark is. And that is where we're going to drill. So, The book suggests using the two-man method, but I have myself. So, no two-man method for me. I'll figure it out. Okay. So, these are going to be our barrel pins. Or the pins that run through the tin. So what we need to do is find a drill bit that just as closely matches the diameter as we can. We have to go, rather go a hair smaller than a hair wider. I think that's going to be our closest match right there. Okay, so that'll be the one we drill with. And this will be, we'll call our pilot hole. Alright, so because I'm going to be drilling through a piece of metal in there, I'm going to lubricate my drill bit just a bit. Just a bit, right? Don't want to get too crazy, but it's also going to help it cut a little bit smoother. Because again, I don't have two people, I'm going to do this as gently as I can. So, looks like we have just shy. This one will be able to drill slightly higher, I believe. Maybe drop the barrel deeper than we need it. This one back here looks like we hit it, but we are just low, and that could be from the shift of the drill bit going into the wood. So we're going to try it one more time and see if I can seat the barrel a little deeper and use the same holes. So it looks like we're still going to be off a bit. But because I don't want to damage that tenon anymore, because I do not have replacements, that is going to be what we have to work with. I am going to try to clean that hole up just a bit. It's going to look like shit. I at least want it to be concentric. So it's not ideal, but because I don't have a replacement tenon, we're going to work with that. And hopefully that front one holds it where it needs it to be. But again, doesn't exactly help that the instructions don't explain any of this stuff. So we have our pins capable of going in. We can drift those, but since we still need to finish off the rest of everything else, we're not doing that today. Even though the book says stock pins, which it needs to be noted that although the assignment says stock pins, the book itself, the text, has zero mention of the stock pin item. There is no such thing as a stock pin according to the text. So that's cool. But this is where we're at. SDI. Today we're going to be going over FTT 210, which is our customizing woodworking. We're going to be working on our Traditions Shenandoah Muzzleloader. Today we're going to be going over finishing off the woodworking stock, finishing that, and we're going to inlet and install the trigger guard and trigger assembly. So let's do it. Alright, first we're going to start off by removing some of this material back here. You see this gap. We'll work on cutting this down with our file. Actually, we're going to start with a pretty aggressive file so we can move more of this material. There is a sizable amount of space there, so we're going to get a few different options we have just in case we need to use them. So. All right. Let's do it. Alright, now we're going to begin shaping the backside, or the toe plate. Because of how thin this is right here, what we're going to do is we're going to taper up to it. We don't have to take off too much wood down here, so we're going to be very careful not to do that, but we're going to try to make these edges disappear. Alright, so looks like here we got this double to where we need it to. I'm happy with this. Got a nice tight fit back here. Everything is nice and good. Let's move on to inlet the trigger assembly. Alright, so now we're going to go over inletting the trigger guard. So before even starting off, we put it in. The front fits without an issue, but the back end, you can already see that it sticks out quite a bit. So we're going to have to fix that. The percussion lock, we're going to seat. Correction. Yeah. So, and then we're going to also test the trigger placement. And want to make sure everything sits and works properly there. So we're going to see that sets. Okay, so
it doesn't show that the statistics show. Look them up.
alright, so we got everything inlet, we got everything fit and cleaned up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to install our trigger assembly and our trigger guard. So, like the book says, this back end bottoms out. So off camera what we've done is we've actually gone through and I just spent probably the last 15-20 minutes making sure this trigger works properly, making any adjustments we needed to both the trigger and the tumbler adjustment. Make sure this thing fires every time we fire it properly. So, just for demonstration purposes, we're going to, we're going to fully load the trigger. We're going to preload the trigger and then fire. So, just to demonstrate that it does in fact fire. So, where's my screw? Right here. And off screen too, I've already pre-drilled these holes. So that's what I usually like to make my screws linear. to match, but that'll work because it's pretty tight already as it is. The second screw here is going to be the action screw. Basically, it comes out to the top of the barrel. It screws in on the bottom right there. But because my barrel's not installed, I'm not installing that screw yet. So next is up is going to be my trigger guard. Mark those out. Alright, I'm just going to pre-drill those holes, and then we're going to install our brass screws. So. Alright. So now with our trigger assembly attached, what we're going to do is I'm going to put away some of these screws and stuff so we don't lose them. Then we're going to go back to refinishing out the stock. Alright, so we're going to match, basically bring it what we did in the back with the brass. Do the same here, slight lips. We're just going to carve that down a little bit, make it a little bit better. Because we're not removing a lot of metal, or a lot of wood rather, I'm not going to use the big, the really coarse one. For the coarse file, I'm just going to go easy with this.
Because more and more ham-radio guys.
Alright, so put our barrel in place. I'm going to put one screw in on top. That way we can connect it firmly to the bottom so it doesn't go nowhere. Alright, so our barrel's installed, our trigger assembly's in. I think our stock, as far as the wood and everything goes, is pretty much finished. It's just time to install some sights, finish this bad boy off. Today we're going to be going over our customizing woodworking lab, finishing out the stock on our Traditions Shenandoah Muzzleloader. So, let's get to it. We're going to start off, we're going to sand down the rest of the stock. We're going to start using 150 grain, moving up to 220 after that, and then we're going to finish off with 320. So we're going to do our best to keep our edges straight, our corners straight. We don't want to round the corners too much, but we want to get the rest of the wood finished out. So let's do it. Also, I need to note, we actually went through, I re-drilled the holes for the tenons. I filled them back in with some sawdust and wood glue. I filled in the bottom holes, both sides. And I don't know if you can see in the camera, but we actually re-drilled the tenons, the holes. That way the pins can fit right through there as needed. Let's get back to sanding. All right, now we need to mark out where we're going to drill our holes for our pump cap. There we have it. Stock's ready for stain. And we're going to polish all the brass, make it all nice and pretty. Get this bad boy out and going.